2007 season with the Yankees, you called it the worst year of your professional life. Looking back now, how do you feel about how things ended?
Well, I broke down because we clinched a wild card berth in Tampa, and it was just an emotional year. I didn't think we had any chance to get the postseason. They never stopped trying.
When Joe Torre looked back at his years with the Yankees, one feeling came through loud and clear. To him, some of these stars were a real disappointment. But here is the strange part. Torre was not some bitter man on the outside throwing stones. He was the manager who lifted the Yankees to the top of the baseball world. Under him, the team reached the playoffs 12 years in a row. They won 6 American League pennants, and also 4 World Series titles. So when a man like that says players let him down, the words hit hard. I am Mason, and this is Baseball Icons. From 1996 to 2000, the Yankees were a true dynasty. They won like a team. They trusted each other. Nobody cared who got the credit. And if you remember how huge those Yankee years felt, give this video some hype right now, because this story is not just about losing games. It is about a great team slowly losing the one thing that made it special. Think about those late 1990s teams for a second. They were tough. They were calm. They played for each other. They won 4 titles in 5 years. Their postseason record in those years was almost unreal. They won nearly 3 out of every 4 playoff games. That is not luck. That is a team that trusted itself when the lights were brightest. Then something changed. From 2001 to 2007, the Yankees still had money. In fact, they had the biggest payroll in all of baseball, year after year. They still had famous names. They still made the playoffs every single season, but the titles stopped coming. In those 7 years, they won 0 World Series. Their playoff record slipped to barely break even. The same city, the same uniform, the same manager, but a very different team. In 2009, Torre teamed up with a writer named Tom Verducci to tell the inside story. The book was called The Yankee Year. It was not a normal sports book full of happy memories. It was an honest look at how a winning team slowly cracked. It used long talks with Torre and with trusted veterans like David Cone and Mike Mussina, and it pointed to something simple but painful. The Yankees did not fall apart because they ran out of money or talent. They fell apart because the room changed. The old team was built on trust and sacrifice. The new team was built on big contracts and big egos. A wall slowly grew inside the clubhouse. On one side stood the players who had won titles with Torre. On the other side stood the high-priced names who had not. And inside that story, Torre pointed to a handful of players who, in his eyes, carried the new problem on their backs. Their fear, their pride, or their odd ways chipped away at the team standard. This is important to understand before we begin. Torre was not just naming bad games or weak stats. Plenty of these men fill a box score. The thing that bothered him went deeper than that. It was about who they were in the quiet. It was about whether you could lean on them when the season hung by a thread. It was about whether they made the men around the better. That is the real test of a Yankee. And in Torre's eyes, these players failed. So let us count them down. These are the players Joe Torre felt let the Yankees down, starting with number 7 and working all the way to the one name that hurt. Number 7 is Jeff. When the Yankees first got Jeff Weaver, Torre had big dreams for him. He even said that this young pitcher might one day lead the team in championship parades. That is a huge thing for a manager to say. It tells you Torre saw real talent. He saw a future ace. He believed Weaver could be part of something great, but the dream did not last. Over time, the coaching staff started to see something else. They felt Weaver did not work hard enough. The word that followed him around was lazy. For a team that lived on effort and grit, that was a heavy label to carry. Then came the night that broke. It was Game 4 of the 2003 World Series. The Yankees were facing Florida Marlins. The game went into extra inning. Torre handed the ball to Weaver in a huge spot, and then Alex Gonzalez stepped up and hit a walk-off home run to win the game. One swing, one pitch, one. According to Torre, that home run did more than lose a game. It destroyed Weaver on the inside. He was never the same after that. The confidence drained out of him. The fear crept in. For the rest of his time in New York, he was just not useful to the team anymore. One pitch can change a career. For Weaver, it did. That is the cruel part of October baseball. The Yankees needed players who could take a punch and stand back up. They needed men who could fail in front of millions and come back the next day ready to fight. Weaver could not do that. The moment was too big and it swallowed him whole. And that is the sad story of high hopes gone wrong. Torre had believed, he had spoken of parades and glory. He had seen a leader in the making. But belief is not the same as toughness. When the test came, Weaver had the arm but not the spine. The dream Torre painted never came true, and the young pitcher faded away. That is why he sits at number 7. Number 6 is Chuck Knoblauch. This story is more sad than angry. Knoblauch was not a bad teammate. He was not full of ego. He was a good player who got broken by his own mind. And that makes his story hard to watch. The Yankees brought him in back in 1998. The goal was simple: take a champion team and make it even better. Knoblauch was a spark plug at the top of the lineup. He could get on base. He could run. He was a strong glove at second base. He was supposed to be the final piece of a perfect machine. But then something strange happened. Knoblauch lost the ability to make a simple throw. The toss from second base to first base is one of the most basic plays in baseball. Little kids make that throw. But Knoblauch could not do it anymore. His arm worked fine. Body worked. It was his mind froze. People in baseball call this yips. It is a mental block that takes over without. The more he thought about the throw, worse it got. The fear grew bigger. Soon a simple ground ball became a nightmare. He would sail throws into the stands. He would short hop them in the dirt. The crowd would hold its breath every time the ball came his way. Torre saw the toll it took. Knoblauch's emotions ran wild. His mood would swing up and down. Fear of failing ate at him. A player who was once a strong defender became a weak spot the team had to hide, and the loneliness made it worse. He pulled away from the group. He became a quiet, hurting figure in the corner of the room. There was no villain in this story. Knoblauch did not let the team down out of pride or laziness. He let them down because fear took, but the damage was real all the same. A key piece of the team broke, and there was no easy way to fix it. This is the part that makes you think. Not every letdown comes from a bad heart. Some come from a mind that turns on its owner. Knoblauch wanted to be great. He wanted to make that throw. He tried so hard that the trying itself became the problem. The harder he fought, the deeper he sank. It is a reminder that the game is played in the head as much as the hands. And when the head breaks, even a strong body cannot save you. That is why he lands at number 6. Number 5 is David Wells. David Wells is a tricky one, so let us be fair. He was not all bad, far from it. He helped the Yankees win in 1998. He was a big game pitcher who once threw a perfect game in pinstripes. He had real history with the team. So why does he land on this list? Because in Torre's eyes, Wells was a double-edged sword. He could help you win, but he could also drive you crazy. Torre used 3 words to paint the picture. He called Wells lazy. He called him unpredictable, and he called him needy. That last word matters a lot. Wells needed a ton of attention. He needed care and praise that most players never asked for. He soaked up time and energy that Torre could have spent on the rest of the team. Managing him was like managing a second job. Some days he was a hero. Some days he was a headache. You never quite knew which Wells would show up. His wild side sometimes fit the old image of a colorful Yankee. The team has always had loud, fun character. But there is a line between fun and harm, and Wells crossed it when it mattered most. The worst moment came in the 2003 World Series against the Marlins. Before Game 5, Wells told Torre that his back was fine. That was a promise. The whole pitching plan leaned on his word, but the promise was not true. During the game, his back gave out. His body broke down on the mound. Suddenly, the Yankees had a hole they could not fill. Their plan fell apart in real time. That one moment showed the deep cost of ways. The team did not just need talent from Wells. They needed the truth. They needed to trust what he told. When that trust failed at the worst possible time, it helped cost them the series. Big game history could not save them when the honest word was missing. And that is what made Wells so hard to deal with. He was not a stranger to winning. He had stood on the mound for great Yankee teams. He knew what October felt like. That history should have made him a rock. Instead, it made him harder to question. People gave him benefit of the doubt because of his past. So when he said his back was fine, they believed. That trust, earned in better days, was the very thing that burned them in the end. That is why Wells sits at number 5. Number 4 is Kevin Brown. If Wells was a headache, Kevin Brown was a fire. He was loud, he was angry, he was hard to control. Torre painted him as a man who could blow up at any moment, and the people around him felt. Brown came with a huge contract, huge expectations, but his temper got in the way. He had a short fuse and a dark. Many of his own teammates did not like him. Some openly could not stand him. In a sport built on long seasons and close quarters, that kind of poison spreads fast. His worst habits showed up in the middle of games. There was a moment where Brown nearly walked away from the team during an actual game. Think about that. A player so unstable that quitting in the heat of battle felt possible. That is not the spirit of a champion. That is a man at war with himself. But the most painful moment came in the playoffs. It was Game 7 of the 2004 American League Championship Series against the Boston Red Sox. The Yankees were in the fight of their lives. Torre, true to his old ways, leaned on his veteran. He gave Brown the ball in the biggest game of the year. It backfired. Brown could not get it done. His struggles helped open the door for one of the most famous collapses in baseball history. The Yankees had a big lead in that series and let it slip away. Brown was not the only reason, but he was part of it, and the choice to trust him in that spot still stings. That is the deeper lesson of Brown. The problem was not just one bad outing. The problem was that the team put its faith in the wrong kind of veteran. Torre trusted experience over feel, and the gamble blew up. A dangerous trust in a dangerous man, and the cost went beyond that one game. A man like Brown changes the air in a room. When a teammate is always angry, always close to blowing up, everyone else walks on eggshells. The whole group tightens up. Easy bond that great teams share cannot grow next to all that heat. So Brown hurt the Yankees twice over. He hurt them on the mound when it counted, and he hurt them every day with the storm he carried inside. That is why Brown lands at number 4. Number 3 is Carl Pavano. Now we get to one of the most disliked names in the whole story. Carl Pavano did not lose the team with anger. He lost them by simply not being. He got hurt again and again, and his teammates stopped believing him. The injuries came so often, players gave him a cruel nickname. They called him 15-day Pavano. That number came from the injured, where hurt players go to heal. To his own teammates, Pavano seemed to live. Every time the team needed him, he was hurt again. The trust drained away one missed start at a time. Then came the line that sealed his fate. Pavano told a coach that he was not going to blow out his arm for this organization. Let that sink in. He was basically saying he would not give his all for the team that paid him. In a clubhouse built on sacrifice, those words were like poison. The anger grew so deep that even the captain spoke up. Derek Jeter is one of the most respected men in baseball history. He rarely showed public heat, but one day he passed Pavano in training and asked him a sharp question. He asked if Pavano was ever going to play. Ever. When Jeter calls you out, the whole room knows you've lost them. Torre tried to fix it. He asked Pavano to travel with the team and face his teammates in person. He hoped maybe they would yell, "Clear the air," and move on. But the team chose something colder than yelling. They chose silence. They simply ignored him. They acted like he was not even there. They turned him into a ghost in his own club. Even Mike Mussina, a calm and steady veteran, started to question whether the injuries were even real. When a man like Mussina doubts you out loud, the message is clear. Pavano did not just fail on the mound. He became invisible to the men around him. He lost their respect, and he never got it back. Think about how rare that silence was. These were grown men, proud and fiery. When they were mad, they yelled. When they cared, they fought. But with Pavano, they did not even bother. Silence is the loudest answer of all. It says you no longer matter. It says we have stopped expecting anything from you. The team had moved on while Pavano was still on the roster. He wore the uniform, but he was not really a Yankee anymore. That is why he sits at number 2 is Randy Johnson. On paper, this signing looked perfect. Randy Johnson was a giant. He stood tall and fire. He had a slider that made hitters look silly. He was a surefire Hall of Famer with a long list of great seasons. The Yankees got him before the 2005 season to be their ace, the leader of the staff. It seemed like a dream move, but New York is not like other places. Pressure there is heavy. The lights are bright. Fans expect titles every single year. And under all that weight, the big man got small. Torre saw it up close. He felt that Johnson was, at times, a nervous wreck. That is a shocking thing to say about such a feared pitcher, but it was true in Torre's eyes. Johnson was very sensitive to what people said about him. The media could get under his skin. When the team hit hard times, he did not stand tall and steady. He did not calm the room. He let the pressure show, and that brought out the biggest problem of all. Johnson never became the leader the team needed. Torre put it in simple words. He wished Johnson would just take the ball and tell the team to follow him. He wanted Johnson to say, in effect, "Get on my back, I will carry us." But that voice never came. Fame was there. The leadership was not. Compare that to the pitchers from the dynasty. Those men were calm under fire. They were steady when the games got tight. They led without fear. They were the rock the team leaned on. Johnson, for all his power, could not be that rock. The Yankees did not just need a famous arm. They needed a steady heart in the middle of the storm. He could not give them that. This is one of the hardest truths in sports. A great resume does not always travel. Johnson had been a giant in other cities. He had crushed hitters for years. But New York asks for something extra. It asks you to stand tall when the whole world is watching and waiting for you to fail. Some men grow in that heat, others shrink. Johnson, sadly, was one who shrank. The pressure he had beaten everywhere else finally caught up with him in pinstripes, and that is why he lands at number 2. Number 1 is Alex Rodriguez. And now we reach the biggest name of them all. Alex Rodriguez, A-Rod. He gets more pages, more focus, and more heat in Torre's book than anyone else. And there is a reason for that. He was the most talented player in the whole story, but he was also the clearest sign of everything that had gone wrong. Let us be fair first. A-Rod could flat out play. His talent was off the charts. When the Yankees got him in 2004, they added one of the best hitters alive. In the regular season, he put up huge numbers. He won awards, he filled the box score. If you only looked at the stats, he was a gift from the baseball gods. But Torre saw what the stats could not show. A-Rod brought a deep insecurity into. He was unsure of himself in a way that did not match his giant talent. He cared too much about how he looked. He wanted everyone to see a perfect image, and his teammates saw right through it. They grew tired of the act. The bullpen catcher Mike Borzello shared a painful detail. Behind A-Rod's back, players started calling him a cruel name. They called him A-Fraud, not A-Rod, A-Fraud. That nickname tells you everything. They felt his whole act was fake, polished, poses, perfect image. To them, none of it felt real. Torre dug into why A-Rod struggled in the biggest moments. He felt the star cared more about how things looked than about getting the job done. In high-pressure spots, A-Rod seemed worried about the wrong things. He chased personal numbers and praise instead of just helping the team win. The fear of looking bad got in the way of being great when it counted. Then there was his strange focus on Derek Jeter. Jeter was beloved in New York. The fans adored him. It came to him without effort. A-Rod wanted that same love so badly that it twisted him up inside. He tried to copy Jeter, tried to chase that same glow, but it never worked. The chase made him look small. The book shares an odd little story about one time A-Rod saw Jeter wearing a certain pair of jeans, so A-Rod sent a clubhouse worker to go buy the exact same pair. That is a tiny thing, but it says so much. He did not just respect Jeter. He wanted to be Jeter, right down to pants. That is not the mind of a confident superstar. That is the mind of a man chasing someone else's shadow. His odd ways spilled onto field too. When he played second base in certain spots, he would make big pointing moves toward the outfielders. He wanted the whole stadium to see that he was counting players and setting the defense. But that is basic baseball. Real pros do it quietly. He turned a simple thing into a show. It was all about being seen. Even his small talk felt fake to the staff. People around the team said his manner was stiff and rehearsed. They pointed to flat, robotic moments, like the simple way he would ask for a snack. Even a plain request for peanut butter and jelly came out feeling cold and stayed. It was like he was always acting, even when no one needed a performance. His teammates did try to help. Good men reached out. Jorge Posada, Jason Giambi, Gary Sheffield, and even Jeter made real efforts to pull him into. They wanted him to feel at home. But A-Rod stayed walled off. He kept his distance. The warmth never reached. He stood inside the team but never truly joined it. The pressure cracked him at times too. In one tense game, A-Rod broke down and cried. Torre had to pull him aside behind the dugout and tell him to be a man. Picture that. The most expensive player in baseball, in tears, being told to pull himself together by his manager. It was a raw and telling moment. But the moment that says it all came at the very end. It was after the 2007 playoff loss to the Cleveland Indians. The season was over. Torre's time was running out. Players came to his office to say goodbye. Even young Joba Chamberlain showed up in tears to thank his manager. The room was full of love and respect Torre. And A-Rod? He left the stadium without a word. No goodbye, no thank you, nothing. After all Torre had done, after all the effort the team had made, A-Rod just walked out in silence. That one cold exit summed up the whole problem. The talent was huge. The connection was empty. Step back and look at the full picture of A-Rod. He had everything a player could want. He had the swing. He had the power. He had the fame and the money. He could have been the heart of a champion team for a decade. But the one thing he could not buy was a quiet, sure sense of who he was. Without that, all the gifts in the world were not enough. He needed praise like air. He chased Jeter's glow instead of building his own. He played for the cameras instead of the team. And in the end, the most gifted man in the room was also the loneliest. That is the tragedy of A-Rod. So much talent, so little peace. That is why, of all 7 names, Alex Rodriguez sits at number 1. But here is the truth that ties it all together. The problem was bigger than these 7 men. You could trade all 7 away, and the deeper sickness would remain, because the Yankees themselves had changed at the core. The old team was built on trust. The new team was built on names. And that shift went all the way up to front office. The men running the team started to think in a new way. They They leaned on numbers and data. They trusted the cold math of the game. They looked at stats like on-base percentage and computer projections. Torre was a different kind of. He led with feel. He led with heart. He built bonds with his player. He trusted his gut, his eyes. So a wall grew between Torre and the general manager, Brian Cashman. One man trusted relationships. The other trusted data. And slowly they stopped trusting each other. It got worse over time. The front office began to see Torre's office as a strange place. They felt it was packed famous guests and outside sponsors. Just talking business with the manager became hard. The simple lines of trust were breaking down. The fights got specific too. After the 2005 season, the pitching coach Mel Stottlemyre retired. Torre and the owner George Steinbrenner wanted a Yankees legend named Ron Guidry to take the job. But Cashman pushed back hard. He saw Guidry as old school, a man out of step, modern baseball tools. Even the choice of a coach became a battle between two ways of thinking. Then came a deeper worry. The front office felt that Torre was using his relief pitchers too much. They feared he was wearing out good arms in games that did not even matter, and the numbers backed up their fear. In 2006, Torre used a reliever named Scott Proctor in 83 games. That is a brutal load. Proctor threw over 100 innings out of the bullpen that year. Other relievers got ground down the same way. Their arms slowly gave out from too much use. There was even a fight over paperwork. Cashman found that the coaching staff was turning in training logs that did not add up. The logs claimed every pitcher did the same 30-pitch workout, no matter their real name. To the front office, it looked like the staff was hiding the truth and dodging. The trust kept slipping. So the front office made a bold. They set strict rules for how a young star pitcher named Joba Chamber could be used in 2007. The public called these limits the Joba rule, but inside the building, people had a different name. They called them the Joe Torre. The point was these rules were built to take bullpen choices out of Torre's hands. The team no longer fully trusted their own manager's calls. Sit with how sad that is. Torre had won 4 titles for his team. He had earned 12 straight trips to playoffs. He was one of the most respected managers alive, and yet the people he worked felt they had to tie his hands. They did not pull him aside and talk it out like family. They built a set of rules to box him in. That is not how you treat a partner you trust. That is how you handle someone you have started to doubt. The bond at the very top of the team was cracking, just like the bond at the clubhouse below. To feel the full weight of this, look across the field at the rival in Boston. The Red Sox were the mirror that made the Yankee pain even sharper. While the Yankees spent big and got little, the Red Sox found a smarter path. Boston was led by a sharp young general manager named Theo Epstein and a steady manager named Terry Francona. They built their team with balance. They mixed smart spending, good young players. They did not just throw money at every shiny name. They spent plan. And the plan worked against the Yankees in the worst way. Boston went out and got tough, strong arms. They signed Curt Schilling in 2004. They added Josh Beckett in 2006. Both of those pitchers stood tall against the Yankees and helped beat them when it mattered. Boston even outbid New York for a star pitcher from Japan named Daisuke Matsuzaka. The Red Sox were beating the Yankees at their own money game. The Yankees, meanwhile, kept spending on the wrong men. They paid big for aging or risky players. They signed Jason Giambi at age 31, knee problems that only got. They spent $26 million to bring over Kei Igawa, who won only 3 games before being sent down. They paid $28 million for an old Roger Clemens, who won just 6 games and got hurt in his only playoff start. And here is the part that really stung. Boston knew how to handle big, odd personalities. They won titles with loud, strange stars like Manny Ramirez and David Ortiz. Those men were not easy, but the Red Sox made it work. The Yankees, with similar types of players, fell apart instead. Same kind of egos, very different results. Boston was not just winning more titles. They were outthinking the Yankees from top to bottom. That comparison had to hurt the most. For years, the Yankees were the kings and the Red Sox were the little brother. New York had the money. New York had the history. New York had the swagger. But money does not win on its own. Smart beats rich when rich gets lazy. Boston found the better players for less. Boston kept their odd stars happy, pulling the same way. The Yankees threw cash at problems and watched them grow. The pain was not just losing. It was losing to the one rival they could never stand to lose to, and they were doing it with a bigger checkbook and a smaller trophies. All of this came to a head when Torre's time finally ended. After the 2007 playoff loss, the Yankees made him a contract offer. But to Torre, it felt like an insult. The deal was for just 1 year. The base pay dropped, and a big chunk of the money was tied to how far the team went to playoffs. It felt like a test. It felt like a slap. After 12 years of service, Torre felt the offer ignored all he had done. He felt Cashman had not stood up for him when it counted. So Torre walked away. He turned down the deal and signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers instead. The long Yankee chapter of his life was over. And then, 2 years later, the book came out and the truth spilled in the open. It is worth pausing on that ending. Here was a man who gave the team 12 of his best years. He brought them 4 titles and endless October nights. And in the end, the team handed him a deal that felt like a goodbye dressed up as an offer. That is how far the trust had fallen. The same Yankees who once leaned on Torre now seemed ready to push him out the door. The Yankee years caused a storm. Some people were furious. They felt Torre had broken a sacred code. In baseball, what happens in the clubhouse is supposed to stay in the clubhouse. To his critics, Torre had aired private business in public. The team-owned network even fired Verducci from a show. That is how deep the anger ran. But Torre defended his work. He said he did not break the trust of the clubhouse. He said the book was honest analysis, not a cheap attack. His goal was to show how hard it was to manage a modern, high-priced team. And whether you loved the book or hated it, one thing was clear. Pulled back the curtain on how broken the dynasty had become. And maybe that was the real reason the anger. People were not just mad about the secret. They were mad because the secrets were true. It is easy to be upset when someone shows the world cracks. But the cracks were already there. Torre did not make. He just named. He had a front row seat to the whole slow fall. He watched the trust drain away year by year. He saw the egos grow and the bonds break. So when he wrote it down, he was not betraying the team. He was telling the story only he could tell. The truth made people uncomfortable, and that discomfort is exactly why the book hit so hard. So where does all of this leave us? It would be easy to end by piling on these 7 players, but that misses the real. This was never just about 7 men who fell short. It was about a great team that lost its way. Remember the old standard. The dynasty Yankees were calm. They were tough. They put the team first. They trusted each other when the game was on the line. They did not need to be the loudest or the richest. They just needed to win together, and they did. 4 titles in 5 years stand as proof. That is why Torre's words still matter today. He is not just some critic looking for blame. He is a man who saw greatness with his own eyes. He held 4 trophies. He knew exactly what a real Yankee team looked like, felt like, and sounded like. So when he says the team lost something, we should listen. He would know better than anyone. And think about what he was really trying to teach us. He was not just settling old scores. He was leaving behind a map. He was showing us how even the mightiest team in sports can rot from the inside. It does not happen in one day. It happens slowly. One selfish star here, one broken trust there, one bad signing. Little by little, the room changes. The thing that made it special slips away so quietly that no one notices until the titles are gone. That is the warning hidden inside the book. Greatness is fragile. You can have all the money and all the talent and still lose it if you stop caring about each other. The lesson is simple but powerful. The Yankees did not fall because they were poor. They had more money than anyone. They did not fall because they lacked talent. They had stars at every turn. They fell because they forgot what made them rich in the first place. They forgot about trust. They forgot about calm. They forgot about sacrifice. They forgot about being a team for being a collection of names. Joe Torre lived through the best of it and the worst of it. He saw the dynasty rise on heart, fall on ego. And in the end, his message is not really about losing. It is about what greatness truly costs. It costs your pride. It costs your need for praise. It costs being willing to win as the Yankees once paid that price gladly, and they ruled the sport. When they stopped, the titles stopped too, and no amount of money could buy back what they had thrown away.